Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to PDN, Personal Development Networking. This is a Houston West Chamber event. Today we are featuring JoeySanchez. So, Houston West Chamber has over 800 company members. But when you take that and you expand it into the staff and the employees and so on, there's over 50,000 people, 70,000 people that you have access to. Now they have meetings, events like this, over 300 times during the year. So you have an opportunity to meet a lot of people and do a lot of business. There's the contact information right there. So what is PDN? Well, PDN is both business and personal development, and we focus on physical. In fact, we'll have a presentation by Laredo on health today. We practice on mental. For instance, we teach people how to improve, not their memory, but their recall. All aspects of business, whether we're doing planning, whether we're doing goal setting, marketing, sales, administration, operations, and leadership. And then, again, all aspects of networking. We meet on the second Wednesday of each month. This is just a few of the speakers that we've had recently. Some of those individuals you'll remember. Marshall Silver, he's the world's top business hypnotist. Eric Swanson. Eric hosts the Habitude Warrior Conference. We've had several of those here in Houston. I've actually spoken at 3 of those conferences. Eric Stanley was the host and founder of In Houston. In Houston was the largest networking organization in Houston. There was over 10,000 members of In Houston. Ryan Hilliard, the best-selling book about networking is called Networking Like a Pro. And Brian Hilliard is the author of that. Hank Moore. Many of you know Hank. He's local here. Hank has written over a dozen books. I think 3 or 4 of them have been nominated for Pulitzer Prizes. And he is a business strategist or not. Howard Partridge is the vice president of sales for the Zig Ziglar Corporation. Ruben Gonzalez, 4 times Olympian in 4 decades. Ruben lived here for quite a few years. We used to work out together at the same health club, and he's now up in Colorado Springs, best-selling author of a number of top books. Tom Big Al Schreider. Tom, well, first of all, he's not big, and his name's not Al, but Tom is the top in the world expert on the techniques used in networking and the skills used in networking. Brian Hilliard, twice. That's not Brian Hilliard. That's Jonathan Sprinkles. You got a misname on her. Sorry, Jonathan, but Jonathan has written 14 or 15 books, Presentation Power. You'll see him on Channel 26. He's one of the top performance trainers there are. Bill Walsh, you know him from the Small Business Expo that used to be conducted here in Houston. Over 2,000 people would show up for that expo. Constable Ted Heap. Now, Ted Heap is local. He's constable for precinct number 5, but he's also constable of the second largest constable's office in the whole United States. He's got over 400 constables in there and 50 support people. Doug Winning. Doug is the top action coach. Action Coach is the top business coaching organization in the world. They have over 1,000 business coaches. Brad Sugars heads that outfit up. Stephanie Ives, and some of you may know Stephanie because he is the head of the YMCA of Greater Houston. Dr. Emily Latron is one of the top individuals training people in the United States. She was a immigrant, came over on the boat, swam part of the way. Fantastic story. Dr. Ivan Meisner, the founder of BNI, the world's largest business referral organization. BNI has almost 300,000 members. So, I spend most of my time in the networking arena, and I give talks, I write books, I do some coaching in networking. But one of the things that I enjoy most is being involved with the individuals that are in the connecting or networking world. So, would it be okay if I told you about some of the things that I've learned from these mentors over the years?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Rather than talking about yourself, talk about them. So when you got an introduction, go through and cross out the I's and the me's and the we's and the us's and the ours and replace them with you. Always ask questions. You spend 70% of your time listening, but when you're talking, you want to be asking questions. Instead of coming up to somebody and saying, what do you do? Rather, and by the way, when you do that, that gives them a license. And the license says that you can tell them how great your company is, and how great your products are, and how great you are. Instead of that, now you're asking them something like, what's going to be your greatest accomplishment this year, Bill? They stop, they have to think, and we start the rapport building, going from there. So, next, give them a gift. We'll take questions at the answer. We will always give somebody a gift. For instance, Red O'Loughlin speaking today, he might give away one of his famous books, best-selling author, or you might introduce them to someone else, helping them out. Give them an article, or in my case, what I give them is a list of the top networking events in Houston, so they can look around. Focus on one thing. One of the top books was written by Keller Williams, Gary Keller. Keller Williams is the largest real estate organization in the world, and it's all about focusing on that one thing. Set the appointment now. Instead of saying, Joey, I'll get back to you. I'll give you a call. What? I'll text you. I'll send you an email. Sometime this week. Do it now. Set the appointment while you're at the meeting if it's a person that you want to follow up with. Develop beneficial habits for work, for health, for all of your relationships, because when you get things in a habit mode, then they start to work for you. Block time out. Always block time out for prospecting, or block time out for following up, or block time out for yourself. Meditation time, good example. Relaxation, fun. Fear. Forget everything and run. No, that's not the right definition. It is find every available resource. And that's what the experts do. Life and business is all about building relationships. You know Zig Ziglar as the motivation, as the marketing, as the sales, as the leadership guru. The best book he ever wrote was called Courtship After Marriage. And you would enjoy that book. Fantastic. And never, ever quit. So now I'd like to give you a list, and because this is being recorded, you'll be able to watch it. I won't go down the list for you. And I'd like to introduce at this time Joey Sanchez, connecting purposeful relationships to a more fulfilling future. He's actually the Senior Director of Ecosystems. We'll take questions at the end. Now, he works for the ION Houston, and if you're like me, you were kind of wondering what ecosystems was. And so the definition is, it's a delicate balance of meaningful relationships. It connects founders, investors, innovators, and leaders for a more fulfilling future. You'll hear him talk about purpose and why and so on when he gives a presentation. He's a board member of the YMCA of Greater Houston, also business unit leader for United Way of Greater Houston, and he's paying back to society at the blue tile street signs. That's some of that great marked up walls that we got here. Help me welcome Joey Sanchez.
Way to go. Thank you, sir. Oh? Oh, okay, perfect. Oh, excellent. There you go. That's the final thing. Just making sure. So, like he said, my name is Joey Sanchez. Pleasure to be here today amongst, such a great group of speakers that were displayed. And really just want to start with a story on how I got here today. Other than in my car, I got here today because of my dad. My dad showed up to America when he was 12 as from Cuba, and he brought us and our family here for a more fulfilling future. That is why my dad moved from his family from Cuba to America. And yesterday was voting day, right? And that's such a fundamental right for our world, is to vote, is to be a part of this democracy. And I feel like the foundation of America was built on purpose. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence was all built on purpose, and that purpose is what's driven our community and our culture for decades and centuries. And so today I'm here to share with you why I'm here and why people need to have purpose and goodness in order to combat the future. I am Senior Director of Ecosystems at the ION, which is a organization in Midtown Houston. The ION, if you haven't been to it, you might have been to it back in the day when it was the old Sears building in Midtown, the flagship Sears building in Houston, Texas. Unfortunately, Sears stopped being innovative. It used to be one of the most innovative companies in the world, and you could buy a house from your house. The Sears catalog, remember that? Right?
Yes.
Good times. Unfortunately, they sunsetted that catalog in 1997. In 1998, a small company was created called Amazon. Disrupted the entire retail industry. With Christmas just around the corner, Amazon will do more sales this year than the entire industry as a whole. That is only from a company that's about 24 years old. Sears had the opportunity to hold on to that market share, but they forgot to be innovative. All they had to do is put that catalog on the internet, and it would have taken the world by storm. So now Sears has closed down their store in Midtown Houston 2017, and the store was repurposed into an innovation tech hub called the ION. So I'm proud to be the Senior Director of Ecosystems there, and the reason why it's ecosystems, so as Gail said, what is an ecosystem? Well, in the biological sense, you have the sun, the soil, and the seeds. And you have to water the seed, and you have to take care of the plants and nurture them to grow. And it creates a thriving ecosystem where the plants take oxygen and they convert it into carbon dioxide, and the animals eat the plants. It's all a cycle. Well, in Houston, we needed to develop a tech ecosystem. We've created an energy ecosystem, we've created a healthcare ecosystem, and we've created an aerospace ecosystem. But our tech ecosystem, although we've had innovative companies like Compaq created here in a garage, we haven't been able to sustain a tech ecosystem in this city. So in my role, in my current company, we are focused on creating a tech ecosystem for Houston so that new companies that are called seed stage companies can grow into unicorns. And that is my day job. But my day job only works for me.
Apple seed.
Exactly. So my day job only works for me because it aligns with my purpose. And I work with a plethora of entrepreneurs who are building companies based on their personal purpose. And my personal purpose in life is to connect others to a more fulfilling future. So any way I can connect you as a human being to a more fulfilling future, just like my dad connected my family to a more fulfilling future by moving from Cuba to America, I want to continue that progress and trajectory to as many people as possible. So I'm asking you guys right now, what is your purpose in life? When was the last time you've been asked what your purpose in life is? It's not every day that you think, or maybe it is, and I hope it is every day, but for most in this world, it's not an everyday conversation on what is your purpose in life. So, what is it? Figure it out. Sit in it. Understand what it is. If you need help, the best way to find your purpose, ask a best friend. They usually know your purpose in life better than you know because they see you acting in real life. So, with your purpose, you should be able to forge the future for good. And what does that mean? So the future, the default future that we all live, if we just went on with our life every single day, we'd get to the end. We all do. And the world, the future is molded by the infrastructure that has been put in place. You'll wake up, you'll go to work, you'll go home, maybe have a family, maybe not. But the future will dictate what happens in your life. Your purpose is your sword, your shield, and your armor. It will create a better future. It will create something different than the default future that is laid out based on the infrastructure and ecosystem we live in. So, and this is really, I would love to know your purpose. I would love to know how you ended up here today and like as in the room, right? It's a very powerful serendipitous moment here. Now, imagine if you could have this on a weekly basis, where you're meeting with other people who are purpose-filled and there for good. So that's the other element, purpose and goodness. So are you purposeful and are you willing to change the future for good? Those are the two ingredients that I have put into my weekly coffee meetup called Cup of Joey. So Cup of Joey is a weekly coffee meetup for purpose and goodness, and it has evolved in the last 78 weeks. Remember what was happening 78 weeks ago? We were in the midst of COVID. I was struggling at home, separated from people, not being able to see my parents, not being able to see my family because of social distancing. And so as soon as there was an opportunity, I brought people together to talk deeper conversations than, oh, it's a beautiful day outside. Oh, how's the weather? Traffic is horrible. Those don't create true relationships. So I think Gail said it perfectly. Life and business is to build meaningful relationships, and meaningful relationships are built off purpose and goodness. And so Cup of Joey, if you know what a cup of coffee is called, a cup of Joe, the difference between a cup of Joe and a cup of Joey, it's the why. Literally. The why is your purpose, and your purpose is that armor to protect you from the default future. And so if I could do one thing in this life, is to continue my dad's work of creating a more fulfilling future for others. He created that for me, and now it is my job to continue to make that possibility for all of Houston, all of Texas, the US, and maybe the world. So Cup of Joey's been a really radical idea to networking.
Isn't you the magic cup?
It's not a magic cup. No, it's definitely not magic. It's magical in the fact when you actually have a purposeful conversation, you understand someone's true being, who they are. It's not about your product or your business at that moment. But guess what happens once you build the meaningful relationship? You trust. Trust is literally the layer that our civilization is built on. But yet, we had voting yesterday, and you see trust eroded on both sides of the spectrum. So we need to develop a purposeful conversation for the future to build trust in our civilization again. And we're doing it 1 cup at a time. 1 cup of coffee, 1 cup of Joe. You know, it really doesn't stop here. It's not necessarily just for your business coworkers and your day job, but I encourage you guys to take Cup of Joey's mentality and have a cup of Joey with your spouse. Have a cup of Joey with your son, with your dad, with your brother and your sister. I recently asked my dad what his purpose was in life. He's 65, struggling with Parkinson's disease, and he said to me, I don't know. I don't know what my purpose is anymore. I've built my family. I've built my career. I've retired. I need to find my purpose again. And so that's the next chapter of Cup of Joey, is helping those who are struggling, looking for their purpose. We're going to develop, through our network of friends and family and colleagues, a coaching library on how to find your purpose, whether to ask your friend or to look back in your history and find that one moment when you were doing something really good and try to do it over and over and do it for others. I've also heard generosity is a great way to find your purpose, is to give to others. So your purpose is a journey. We're on it every single day, and I think that it's better shared. So thank you guys very much for your time today, and thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Joey, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
I want to tell you guys, pardon me, High Eyes have been encouraging me to attend Cup of Joy for several months, and I always had an excuse, you know, this or that. Finally, I got there, and everything that Joey's been talking about Cup of Joy, I experienced. In fact, in the 2 meetings that I've been there, I have made 54 different contacts with individuals that will result in some type of interaction. So, great opportunity. Now, I'd like to introduce to you our next speaker on brain health. Laredo Laughlin is, rather than a physician or connected with the medical industry, he is a researcher. He is working on cause and effect type solutions. Retired Navy captain, 31 years, 61 countries, 5 academic degrees, 7 professional certifications, been married 54 years, 2 kids, 3 grandkids. He is the author of 5 books. I happen to have one of them right here for you. But, actually, it's my favorite. It's called The Joy of Ageless Health, and it turns out to be a great bestseller. You need to read that book. He is also a book strategist. If you've been thinking about writing a book, then you need to contact Red, and he'll take you through the steps to get to where you can end up being a bestseller also.
He did it for me for the 2 books that I've read.
Wow.
I had just verified that of the 2 books that he'd written, they made it to the top. Yours can too. So help me welcome Red O'Laughlin.
Hey!
Thank you very much, Gil. Today we're going to talk a little bit about brain health, but just before I get that way, back about sophomore in high school, I took my first course in chemistry. I fell in love with it. So much in love with it, I got a degree in it. However, as soon as I graduated, I got an invitation to Vietnam, so I didn't get a chance to practice it. I wrote a couple of books, not in health and wellness that I'm doing now, but primarily in self-improvement, motivation, going around the United States speaking and selling things anyway. My wife came down with breast cancer a number of years ago, and part of my attempt to help her with her side effects, I pulled my chemistry back out of the drawer and started researching what can I do to help her. And I'm looking at it at the cellular level in the body, what causes things to happen. And when you start looking, well, if you have too much of this, this happens. If you don't have enough of this, this happens. Well, if I want more of this, how do I make that happen? And so there are a lot of things that accelerate or decelerate certain processes in the body. And that's what I speak about, that's what I research, that's what I write about all the time. So most of my focus now is on the areas of health and wellness. Today we're going to talk a little bit about brain health. Our brains are essentially a little over half, 60%, are made up of fat. Half of that fat is omega-3, primarily the DHA part of EPA and DHA. But our brains need that fat in order to have the structure that it has. So we look at the structure in there, that fat molecule, that omega-3, when you have it, everything works pretty well. As you start having problems with a number of things, we have problems. But that DHA does more than just our brain. It helps our eyes, it helps our overall mood, it helps our bones, it helps a lot of things. It improves our sleep, amazing things that it can do. Well, it turns out that the brain can operate on two different fuel sources. Number one is ketones, fats. The other one is glucose. That's what most of us operate on, the foods we eat. So if you're only eating fats and proteins, eventually you're going to end up on a ketone diet, keto diet. If you're having any kind of fruits and vegetables that have a little bit of carbohydrates, not much, you can probably maintain that same keto diet. But the minute you start adding carbohydrates, body shifts. I mean, as soon as that insulin switch goes on, because that carbohydrate's in the body, boom, you're now in a glucose environment. That glucose will get into the brain, and the brain is fine. There are some parts of the brain that actually need glucose. But if you're on a total keto diet, the brain can make the glucose it needs from proteins and fats easily. It's called glucogenesis, but regardless. Anyway, we have a lot of that stuff, but that's the structure of the brain. Let's look a little bit about the function of the brain. One of the primary molecules that is absolutely needed is magnesium. Now, there are several different kinds of magnesium, but the one the brain thrives on is called MLT, magnesium L-threonate. It passes through the blood-brain barrier, and it's the one that's needed because when you look at the end of the synapses, where the actual communication goes in the neuronal path, that's where this magnesium is needed in order to beef up that omega-3 and to give you a good, clean, fast path for thinking. If you have too much iron, that's going to affect the brain, liver, and other things. Usually when you give a blood test, they take that, drop it, and you now have equipment that you don't have to drop the blood anymore. But if you have a little bit too much iron, iron toxicity, that could affect not only the brain but other parts of your body too, your heart and your liver. There's a thing called chelation, EDTA, ethylene diamine tetracetic acid. It will chelate not only iron but other heavy metals out of the body very easily. So if it's one of those things, it's a pretty easy thing to do. But if you don't know you have it, you can't do it. So you have to have some kind of annual or periodic checkup that those kinds of things are doing. If you're donating blood every 2 months, fantastic way of keeping track of things. I used to donate blood all the time. I'm talking about twice a week. I have about 40 gallons of blood products that I've donated over the years. But it's one of those things that as soon as something's wrong, they're going to let you know about it. Zinc. If you're deficient in zinc, now you start having a problem that could relate to dementia down the road. These things don't happen overnight. They don't. They really take a long time to have. But zinc is one of those ones that we can, in fact, get from our diet. In fact, I recommend everything being from our diet, except the Sears catalog. And I do want to talk about that because that was an amazing experience in my life with Sears catalog as a mailman. Anyway, I still have memories of those delivering. But zinc, you can improve zinc with a few extra things, just the dietary, but intermittent fasting, prolonged fasting helps the body just really hang on to that zinc a lot better. When you have a cell phone, it's right next to your ear. Any kind of radiation varies by the intensity of the radiation and the distance and the duration. So if you're sitting right there versus here on a speaker, this is a lot more dangerous if you're on it many hours a day. If you're sitting there looking at it, again, it's a distance issue. So it's not a big deal. But if your job or what your lifestyle is, that phone is on your ear all day long. Now, I have hearing aids. Yeah, there's a very slight amount there. You have other kinds of hearing buds. Again, but it's the duration and the intensity and the distance. Those are the things that you need to do. But if you have cell phones next to your ear all day long, one of the things you're going to do is deplete a little bit of your niacin, your vitamin B3. Oxidation. The main cause of disease, literally every disease, 99% of them, is inflammation. Inflammation starts at the cellular level. You have chronic low-level cellular inflammation. It's going to lead to mutations in your DNA, and untreated over time, you're going to end up with something. Now, the first level of being untreated is called oxidation. So that oxidation is now that inflammation running amok, and now you're kind of accelerating the inflammatory processes in the body. Omega-3s are really good about settling them down because it's an antioxidant. Any kind of antioxidant, fruits and vegetables primarily, will kill them. You have free radicals, they go down there and take care of that free radical damage. One of the things I did for this presentation is with my PPP. I didn't talk about that. Anyway, the brain uses antioxidants just as much as anything else. One of the best ones I love is propionic, PQQ. It's a unique molecule that passes through the blood-brain barrier, but more importantly, it can be regenerated 25,000 times. That same molecule can be effective as if you had 25,000 molecules in there. You get it from spinach, from leafy green vegetables, primarily parsley more than anything else.
Spinach outside.
And also green bell peppers have a very high concentration of PQQ. But if you want to calm down oxidation, minimize the level of inflammation that's in there. Now, a lot of us use vegetable oils, corn oils, safflower. So long as it's about 1-to-1 ratio with omega-3s, not a problem. It gets beyond 4 omega-6s to omega-3, you start to have a problem. It's an essential fatty acid, omega-6s. You have to have our body's omega. But you get over 4-to-1, it starts becoming an inflammatory effect in the body. This becomes so inflammatory that the standard American diet, somewhere between 30 and 60 to 1 omega-3s, because we don't eat very many omega-3s on a daily basis. B1 deficiency. Again, you have that and you start, where did I leave my keys? Who's that? You just have a lot of problems with memory. You have gait, vision issues. A lot of issues are there. You even find out that it affects your sleep, it affects your relationships, just a lot of different areas. And that's a super easy one to fix. High glucose levels burn B1s. In other words, let's say you're a little low on B1 because your diet's not exactly the way it should be. Well, and then all of a sudden, that diet, if you happen to have, let's say, the Big Mac and the Super Coke size and the extra French fries, all those extra carbohydrates are going to get in there and cause B1 to be burned up faster. And when the body makes B1, which it can, it really wants to make B12 more than B1, but the body will go where it needs to go. And so you're sitting there and you think you have a healthy diet, and I'm trying to get all this. And sometimes because of other choices you make, the body says, oh, I'd love to do this, but I have to do this because that's what the chemicals are telling me to do. Hypoxia. Usually you think about that as somebody flying in an airplane, they don't have their oxygen mask on, and all of a sudden, it doesn't take long, 40 seconds, it's about as long as I can stand at 30,000 feet with no oxygen. As an aviator, we used to have to do these hyperbaric, you had to use chambers where you had to be able to identify your fingernails turn blue and you experience the effects of hypoxia so you know what it felt like.
Wow.
And that was one of the things we had to go through. Well, hypoxia is not always related to high altitude. If you have a stroke, you have a little bit of TIA, the ischemic attack. It's kind of like a mini stroke. Sleep apnea, that's a big one. That can almost be deadly. But when the oxygen levels are low in the brain, you start having a problem. One of the ways to fix that is a hyperbaric oxygen chamber where it forces pressure in. In fact, one of the articles I was reading, it's not even 2 weeks ago, it said that, I believe it's the UK, United Kingdom, that the exercise, vigorous exercise done routinely was as good as 3 of the dementia drugs as far as the effectivity, because it forced on a routine basis that much oxygen into the brain, and the level of cognitive skills was improved as much as if they were taking Aricept or half a dozen other. So oxygen really means a lot in the brain. Ketones have an ability to increase that. One of my favorite other chemicals in the body other than PQQ is BDNF. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This is miracle grow for your brain. Your body makes it, it's not a problem. It regrows brain cells, it so protective. It's just, it's amazing. It really is fertilizer for the brain. So when you're looking at the communication going down the nerve path, cutting across the synapse, and everything in there that BDNF enhances. It's amazing. How do you get high intensity exercise, basically sprinting, or reducing a significant amount of carbs, intermittent fasting, prolonged fasting, get the carbs out of the system, BDNF goes up. If you exercise vigorously, BDNF goes up. But what else happens at the same thing? If you did intermittent or prolonged fasting or high intensity exercise, your human growth hormone goes up. And as we get older, that is one of the things that erodes naturally, but literally a 24-hour fast can almost double the amount of, can almost get you back to your teenage years of human growth hormone. It's an amazing thing. Blood glucose, these are things you hear about, but what is it? You get the little stick, okay, you're type 2 diabetic, I need this, that, or whatever. But we have a nice range for glucose. And that glucose can go above that range or below that range. If you have too much, on a momentary basis, not too bad. Every single day, constantly, can be a problem. You can become pre-diabetic, diabetic, a lot of issues down the road. If you have too little, hypoglycemic, you also have a little bit of a problem. You may have experienced this. You go out to have lunch, have a big Italian lunch, lots of bread, pasta. You come back to work, and about 2 hours later, you can't keep your eyes open. That's that blood sugar now finally collapsing. You're going below the norm, but that spikes above and below has a problem. Now you hear a lot of nutritionists says you really ought to have 4 to 6 meals a day snacks, but that keeps that blood sugar going back and forth. Not really, to me, a healthy way of doing it. 1 meal a day would be ideal. 2 meals a day should be maximum, maybe within a 6-hour window. That's intermittent fasting. But if you have to have 3 meals a day, figure out what you really need to have that's not going to cause your insulin to spike, which is basically proteins, fats, fruits and vegetables, very little carbs. There's no absolute essential carb that I'm aware of. Okay, so wrapping things up here kind of quickly. What are some of the healthy things we can do for our brain? Cut out sugars. If you have to have a sugar, try to get something of a more complex, brown rice, something down the road that takes a while to cook. If it's a 5-minute special, boom, it's probably not as good as something else. Don't snack, more greens. When you go into a restaurant, think about what's the first thing they bring is bread. So you start picking out a little bit of bread. Now you have a nice meal and they have all sorts of things on. But what do you have at the end? Dessert. It's one of the things you can do is you just split it down the middle. Okay, I'm gonna take that half home. The bread's there. I only need half a piece of bread. Think in halves. If you're only going to have half of something, it's not as bad as a full thing. And savor that one little half a piece of bread. Savor it, taste it, enjoy it, feel the textures in your mouth. Really get the full benefit from there. Most of the time, I will split whatever I have as a meal, bring it home. I spent $25 for lunch. Well, it's a $12.50 lunch. Now I have my other $12.50 lunch at home. I just take it out and eat it. Don't eat unless you're hungry. You wake up first thing in the morning and you're hungry. Well, are you hungry or are you dehydrated? More than likely, you're dehydrated. If you're, drink some water, coffee, tea, whatever. And if you're still hungry a half hour later, then maybe you really are hungry. But a lot of times we eat out of habit, not out of real hunger. We hear the expression, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Well, that's the Western philosophy. If you look at Eastern philosophy, they'll say, I don't care if we have breakfast or not, it's not that important. To them, the middle meal of the day is the most important because it should be a nice big meal that lasts you all day long and you have a little snack for dinner because you don't want it to interfere with your
Lunch, I suppose?
Lunch is the better meal of the day. So I'm open for any questions if he's going to permit it. I got 2 books that I just gave one to Joey. Longevity Secrets talks about the 2 primary causes of aging and what you can do about it.
I know a poem called "Ode to the Captain."
But I'm going to turn the meeting back over to Gail. And Gail, thank you very much for.
Red, thank you. Appreciate that information.
And I will be giving away one book today.
Okay. So,
I enjoyed that.
how many of you are receiving the Connections Now newspaper? Quite a number of you. These are some of the things that go on. We have a book review on. But we start off with all the top networking events in the greater Houston area here. And we always have articles by Red O'Loughlin. We have some of the senior resource group events on there. Every Wednesday, Katy Business Connections has a meeting. I was there this morning. It starts at 8:30, and it's a great networking event. One of the ones I really enjoy is called the Senior Estate Concierge, and this is, rather than a networking group, this is a resource and solutions group. So if you're looking for something to help out a senior or their family, then this is a group to go to. The third Tuesday of every month, we have the In Houston KD Business Professional Group. And you see Eric Stanley again. I mentioned him earlier. This is the last, I think he had 6 of the area chapters at one time. This is the last chapter, but always a great networking meeting. Houston West Chamber of Commerce on the 3rd Wednesday, it's at 8 o'clock in the morning. They have WOW, that's Win on Wednesday. We used to call it Rise and Grind. I like WOW better. And they do it right here at the Cantina Laredo. Third Thursday, the Christian Business Fellowship Association. I think they have now 5 different locations around town, but this happened to be one that is convenient for me, and I enjoy this.
There's the one that meets tomorrow.
Yeah.
We're going to have him as our speaker.
Nice.
One other thing I want to mention to you is that the Senate District 17 Forum is coming up on November the 17th. If you have an interest after the disaster we had yesterday, then this would be a good session for you to go to. Katy Christian Chamber. It's the only Christian chamber that I actually know, and they always have great speakers. They meet at the Church on the Rock. Toolbox Ministries. That was last month's list.
It was yesterday.
But
Yesterday.
but they were great. They were great sessions. This is a very unique organization because it's all faith-based businesses, and the unique part about it is that they meet at some of the top meeting locations in Houston. For instance, they meet at the Houston Club. They'll meet at the Houston Racket Club. They'll meet at the Westside Country Country Club, Lakeside Country Club. And a member of the organization foots the bill for the luncheon. Fantastic. Great bunch of folks. One thing I always mention to you is regarding seniors. It's called the Boomer Connection, for seniors by seniors, TV series. And you can go, we have several different locations where you can go and you can see this TV series. So, we always give you a gift. This is my gift to you. Now, my name is on this book, but most of the work was done by a physician who's a specialist in digestion and nutrition, and 4 ways to optimize your digestion. The gut is actually the second brain, and the more you learn about it, the better your health will be. I want to thank you for attending today, and we look forward to seeing you at the next session.